Sabrina, welcome back to the show. As you may know, we're doing a series on entrepreneurship and motherhood, and you're a prime example of somebody who has embraced both of these roles in such a dynamic way. And I'm really excited for you to pour into our audience and just really kind of peel back the curtain of what it looks like to run multiple businesses. You and your husband are business partners, and you're also parents to young kids. And I think the most common narrative that I find when I speak to especially moms who have entrepreneurial desires is this idea of like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? You know, I'm out here busting my ass, trying to be a mom, trying to like do all the things. And now you want me to add entrepreneurship into the mix. So I feel like we're going to have a great conversation. And for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go into somewhat of your backstory and then how you got into entrepreneurship and how you're balancing all that with motherhood.
Yeah. So I'm Sabrina Castillo, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a working mom, and my husband and I, we own a restaurant business. So we have two brands, Carlitos Barbecue Taqueria, and we recently launched Carlitos Tequileria. But I've been an entrepreneur since I was like 22 years old. I was ballsy at 22. I really thought I could run a business, and I had no idea. And as I move forward in entrepreneurship and working as a mom, I think what really keeps myself and my husband grounded is that we're very clear on what we want out of life, and that everything we get to accomplish is just like work related, right? But what is really important to us is something we really try to connect. But I've had many, many lives. And I think at the core of it, it's always staying true to my dreams, staying in progress, and just trying to accomplish really dope stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those dope things that you've done, because you've had several different careers and you've had several different businesses. So kind of take us back through the trajectory of where your journey has gone.
Yeah, so I actually am not from New York City. I'm from Los Angeles, and my first job out of college was in New York City. I had never been on a public bus. I had never been on the train, but I was going to be in public relations in New York City. And I got my first job at an agency, and I did public relations. I've always been one of those people that if I get enough experience in something, I think I can do it all. And that has served me, and it's gotten to me into a lot of trouble also. Good trouble. Uncomfortable trouble, but nonetheless, that's what it's been. So my first business, I was 24. I was working for Mundos. I don't know if anybody remembers Mundos, The Roof, Telemundo. And I was like, wow, nobody's paying attention to reggaeton. I had never even really heard reggaeton because in LA, there wasn't any of that at that time. And I was like, I'm going to be a publicist to these guys because nobody could see what they're doing. And I had already worked for a really big PR agency. And I was like, if I could only do this. And that's exactly what I did. I was the publicist for Teo Calderon, Aventura. That's how I met Carlos. Carlos was actually a quasi paparazzi photographer at the time. I didn't invite him. I invited a reporter to a shoot. They brought Carlos, and that's what I did. What I will say, that was a really big lesson in business because I knew nothing about business. I knew how to get the clients. I knew how to get paid, but how to really grow and scale a PR agency, I was way in over my head. And at the time, there was no YouTube. There was no mentors. Nobody wanted to mentor me. Everybody felt like it was a competition. It was weird. I was like, well, if I do this, then I'll figure it out. It was hard, man. It was so hard. I was a good publicist, but growing and scaling a business just because you want to be an entrepreneur is not the way it goes, right? As you know, you have to learn a lot of different things. I didn't know how to keep profit and losses. I didn't know like how to invoice. It was just like a really hard lesson to learn, but I did. And I made amazing people. I met Carlos, and then I realized I was like, okay, we have these skills. From there, we started a photography business because now we have the contacts. So we're doing photography. We are doing album covers. We did the Weeknd's album release party. Like we just did a lot of really cool things, and we were young. We were just trying to figure things out. But I think at some point you do get this feeling of like, okay, well, how are we going to live life? How are we going to buy a house? How are we going to have kids? How are we going to afford to get married? Like we couldn't afford anything. And so what we did is we just really made a plan. And he's like, well, I've always wanted to have a restaurant. I was like, all right, so let's start from the bottom. He got a job dishwashing. Now we're in our late 30s. So it's hard to start from the bottom at that age. I went to go get a job so that we could have like a salary. I had a degree. I knew what to do, right? So I went to go get a job. I had worked on some really cool celebrity projects, one being Voto Latino, being one of the founding team members there. And so I got into advocacy and I started to work for the city of New York. I was the director of the NYC Votes program there. And we really used those years to build ourselves up financially. We were house hacking before I knew what house hacking was. We had a roommate. So we were able to really get into a space of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we built it together.
I love that. And one thing that sticks out for me about you, which I think is very atypical of the Latino culture, is your level of comfort with risk taking is not something that is common to us as a community. I think about like how many people over the years have tried to talk me out of all the crazy shit I've done. And at some point I've kind of had to just be like, blinders. I can't be paying attention to y'all because the people that are so quick to discourage you are usually the people who haven't even like attempted to do the thing that you're trying to do. So where does that innate like risk tolerance come from for you?
It started a little bit as like a really false confidence.
Delulu.
Delulu, that my mom made me believe that I could do anything. When I called her and I said, I have a job in New York City and I don't know where I'm going to live. And I had no idea how expensive New York was. She said, I think your grandmother has a childhood friend who lives in Long Island. I'll call her. That's how I ended up with a place. So my mom had a big part in just making me believe. But there was a time where I'm taking a lot of risks and she's getting nervous, right? Because now I'm getting older and I don't have the things that maybe my cousins have, like new cars and houses and all these things. And I remember telling her, I was like, Mom, I'm trying to build something like Gloria Stefan did for her family. I'm trying to do for me. Like, I don't know. I'm telling you, really delusional stuff going on in my brain. And I was like, I'm not moving back to LA. This is it. Now she's like, okay. So she was very supportive, but also like, I'm sure very scared.
Yeah. She just didn't project that on you, which I think is the key, right? Like, I think as parents, it's okay to be fearful for your child, but you also have to come from a place of like, they got to learn. It's like, I got to trust what I've put in them and hope for the best. And if they fall, like I'm here, but I also can't be so controlling that I never let them actually like spread their wings.
And I got to say, every day I'm like, okay, I don't know how my mom did it because I have a hard time letting go with my kids. I'm like, you want to do what?
The struggle is real, y'all. We are healing in real time. Okay, so
Yes.
Another thing that I love about your story, and it sounds like your husband has the same characteristic, is like y'all are willing to make the hard choices now with the vision like as the guiding light, right? And so for a lot of people who don't have a trust fund or, just freaking $100,000 in the bank to like start a business, that's going to mean making some hard choices, like having a roommate, like having to get a fucking job that maybe you don't want to do because you need the steady income to kind of give you that foundation. Where do you think that attribute for you guys comes from? Just being able to have like that delayed gratification, knowing that you're working towards something bigger.
I'm not good at that. I've gotten good at that, but that comes from Carlos. He's good at that. At first, when we first started living together, he was kind of taking my lead. I grew up like in the suburbs. I grew up with just having a little bit more stability. So in my brain, by the time I'm 30, I better be married. I better have a house. I better have a car. I better have all of that or I'm going to have a panic attack, right? And as we got closer, he was like, but we got this. Don't worry. So we didn't get married until after I was 30. We didn't have kids until after 35. At some point, somewhere between 29 and 30, I started to realize like, oh, wait, I get to create my own story, right? So it's okay if we're married and we have a roommate. When we were looking for a house, we got approved. And I think we got approved for like $500,000, something crazy that then we definitely could not afford. And the mortgage guy gave us what the monthly would be. And we're like, oh no, we can't afford that. We could afford this. And I'm 3 months pregnant. And he's like, well, you could afford Jersey in a studio. So guess where we ended up? Jersey in a studio. Having a newborn in that studio, I still remember Carlos. He's like, all our friends have babies. No one uses their nursery. That baby stays next to them the whole time. We made it the most incredible home. And we stayed there for 2 years. We launched the business there. We had the first and second baby in that studio.
Wow. Again, being really good at just making those hard choices, right? Because I think a lot of people would be like, well, if this is all we can afford, then maybe we're just not going to have kids or we're going to wait. And you guys did wait anyway, right? Like traditionally, I think there's a lot of pressure on us as Latinas to like have your kids as quickly as possible. You did not succumb to that pressure because obviously you're working towards other things and there's like competing interests. How did you guys actually come to the decision of parenthood? Like when the time was quote unquote right?
When we had enough money in the bank.
And what did that look like?
So that we decided to get married, and we got married. And one of the things that I also, again, it was a lot of unlearning. We got married, and the first thing I said is like, okay, when are we having a baby? And it was a real conversation between the two of us. And once he asked the right questions, I was like, oh, wait, I'm not ready for a baby. I don't want a baby. Like, I'm only 30 years old. I don't want a baby. And so what that looked like was us really understanding what it meant to be stress-free. So it was really small at the time. We're like, if we could just have $15,000 in savings, we would feel more comfortable. Because at the time, like our expenses were low, right? And we were like, okay, so that's what we got to save. Carlos and I have always had 3 incomes. Again, because I had then gone back to work. We had the photography business, and in between that and starting the business, we were doing catering on the side. Then he got a full-time job. And so we were always able to produce more income for ourselves. And we just saved and saved. And once we felt really comfortable, we were able to then say, okay, we're going to have a baby. Once we did that, I was able to take 6 months off of maternity leave because that's what we wanted to do. We just really wanted to enjoy it. What I will say now is I'm glad that we started the business right around that time, because if we would have had both kids, I think the delusional part of us has definitely tamed. The risk has tamed a lot. And I don't think that we would have had the courage to say like, no, we got this. So it kind of all started at the same time. The first baby was super easy. It was like a honeymoon stage. We had saved. We were like, now we're going to launch the food truck. We started the food truck. And the week that she was born is the week that we opened the food truck.
Oh my God. Okay, wait a minute. I'm about to choke because that's crazy. So you are here freshly, like new mom, newborn child, and y'all decide to launch.
And a toddler.
Oh, and a toddler. Jesus Christ. Okay. So take me back to those initial days, because I know what my life looks like with a small child. My daughter is like 3 months old now, and I am so glad I started the business before, because I can't even imagine like trying to build this shit right now. Take me back.
Yeah. So I had a really stable job. I worked for the city of New York. I was doing what I like to do. So I want to really give credit to that. Those are all decisions that we had made before. And so when I took 6 months off for my son, my first maternity leave, I was really able to find myself, get myself the space. I don't know if 3 months is enough for maternity leave. I know that it's unfortunate that that's all women can take sometime, but I don't think you start getting your bearings until like month 4 or 5. And then I don't really think you come out of that fog until like a year later. So that whole year, we had really taken the time to only focus on having a baby. And because we did that, and we had already been planning on what the food truck was going to be like, we wanted to be able to say, okay, we can start the food truck. The food truck was us starting small. It was not small at all, but we thought it was small. And here's another key thing, though, that I want to give some insight on. From the very beginning, we have always really driven our business by what our internal values are. And one of the things that we knew we never wanted to do was to work on a business and not be there for our family. And so that's why we actually stopped doing photography, because we're like, we can't have a baby and be out all these nights and weekends. And so when we did decide for the food truck, we said, we need a partner. We need a partner who is going to be our other half basically in this business venture. We now have 2 business partners, but at the time we launched the food truck with a business partner. And I still remember telling Carlos, I was like, I rather have a piece of something than a large piece of nothing, right? Where we're just like completely stretched. And so we have a business partner. We launched it. It worked out amazingly. And then as we started to scale, we brought in a third partner because that scale was a lot bigger. And now that the 3 of us, I mean, we're like families. One of them happens to be Carlos's childhood best friend, who just really was the right fit for what we were looking for. But from the very beginning, the decision was that even though we were going to be in hospitality, we were still going to spend time as a family.
Which I think is a brilliant insight to share, because, you know, the first thing that came to my head when I think of like a hospitality food and beverage business is the long ass hours, especially the food truck. I mean, you got to move it around, right? You got to go like where the audience is. So what was your day to day like back in the beginning of this journey?
So 2017 was definitely the hardest year. That's the year that we launched the food truck. The day-to-day was crazy. So we both had big jobs. I was working as a director. Carlos was working as a general manager for Sodexo, which is the big hospitality. Because one of the things I didn't mention is when we decided to go in hospitality, we take big risks, but we like to do things right. So he went back to school for a bachelor's in hospitality and culinary and worked in hospitality. So when we both had these full-time jobs and a baby and the food truck, really from a personal taxing place, he got the biggest hit. He's out on the truck on the weekends. He's working 9 to 5 and then fitting in wherever he can. So there is a sacrifice that I don't think we could have avoided in spending time together. And then I sort of became a solo parent, and that was really hard with 2 under 2. On the weekends, because I had been used to the 3 of us always being together. So that was really probably the hardest piece, but also I'll give you a good example. So they were invited for this really good opportunity on Black Friday with the food truck. It was going to be a really good opportunity to be there with the food truck. And again, me being a dreamer, I'm like, yes, we got to do it. We got to do it. And then what I didn't realize is like, oh shit, I'm going to be alone on Thanksgiving with these 2 babies. But I was like, I got this. I got this. We got this. You go do this. I'll do that. Even when you think you got it, I think it was like 9 p.m. It hit me. I'm like crying. Remember, I'm from LA. I don't have family here. It's definitely had its sacrifices. And I think that because we have really worked around this value, as we grow, we continue to make decisions to ensure that we're going to spend time as a family. So every time we scale, I know there's going to be a small period where it's going to feel hard. Now the kids are older. So I explained to them, we're launching a new restaurant. He's not going to be around as much. We're going to have to be here. I have to be here. Do you guys understand what's happening? So my son's going to be 10 and he's like, I'm going to run this business when I get older. He's like, I need to be in these meetings. Can I go to the meetings? He goes, I need to learn this now. So we communicate really well of what to expect. Of course, the more experience you have, the more consistent you are, the more systems you have in place. What used to take a year only takes a month now, right? So these phases of being overwhelmed are a lot shorter and happen a lot less.
Because you now know how to support yourself during these transition periods, whereas before it's kind of like you're learning as you go.
Yeah, we didn't know what to expect before, and now we do.
Yeah. Okay. So walk me through the scaling process. Like, what does your business look like now versus how it started?
Yeah. So we have a food truck, a full mobile business that does a lot of the New York City big festivals. We have 3 brick and mortars for quick service, which is the taquerias, one in the airport, one at Jersey City, and one in Paramus, New Jersey. And then we launched our first full service in New York for the first time. And then we're launching the 5th one in another area of New York. What I want to say though, and this is why I love having these conversations, that it feels like it's a lot, but the one in New York, I think we've been negotiating for the past 2 years. And the one that we're going to open in the fall has been under negotiation and many different levels of, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen, since 2020? So these are all things that have just taken a long time to work through, different strategies, financing, scaling, building a team. is it the right time? One of the things I really think we've done well, like I said, is we're more calculated in our risk. We don't just say yes to every opportunity now. And as we continue to grow, we look at what is going to be best for our team and what is going to be best for us also. And so now it feels fast from the outside, but it scales and grows a lot slower. And I think what we have mostly focused on is creating systems. Because one of the things that we realized and is, oh, wow, this could be a lot bigger than we could probably ever imagine, right? And we could be one of those Latinos that builds like a big corporate company around the hospitality business. But what does that really look like? How do we scale? And where do we want to scale, right? And how is that going to look? So if you ask Carlos, he'll say that we're growing very slow, but that's because he's in every meeting and he's in every aspect of it. And from the outside, it looks like all these things are just popping up.
That's brilliant. You know, I feel like when it comes to the initial idea of like what a business is versus like what it transforms, it's always like kind of startling how from the outside looking in, it looks like this shit just blew up overnight. But like you mentioned, this is years in the making. This is 2017 that you launched the food truck. We're now in like 2025. So this is year 8. You had to deal with a pandemic. You know, y'all had to figure out how to be parents and run businesses that you've never run before. Make, I'm sure, a lot of financial sacrifices too. Let's talk about what some of those financial sacrifices look like, because I think that's an area where a lot of people get freaked out. And especially if you're a parent, you know, you have to be really the steward of your family's financial security is resting on you making like these good financial decisions from a personal perspective and also from a business perspective. So what does that look like?
It's interesting you say that. The other day, someone said something. I was like, well, we really just treat ourselves like employees. So we get paid a certain amount and we're responsible with what we get paid because yes, there is a business and yes, there is profit and yes, there is, you know, different places to manage money, but we are committed to the growth of the business. At the same time, we're committed to the growth of our family. So Carlos and I are always thinking about, we don't just make an income from here. So one thing that people don't know is that I continue to have a 9-to-5 that helps us offset a lot of things like health insurance, that helps us offset a lot of things. Now, I have a really fortunate to have a great network and have been able to scale my career in a way that allows me to still show up in places like my business. I'm very transparent. Everyone knows what my goals are. I still show up to manage what I need to manage, but I still work from home. I'm still able to be present, but there are things that are very calculated. So when we talk about our family and the finances, it really has to do more of what are the different incomes we can have and how do we build assets for our family? And then how do we build assets for the business, right? So not that we keep them separate, but we do because they each have different requirements. The kids are going to have to go to college. The kids are going to have to want certain things. And we have daily expenses and we have things that we want to have. So our sacrifices now, I think, is more of a disciplined sacrifice, meaning not getting hyped on a bigger house and sometimes I think about it, I'm like, I don't know if I want a bigger house. I kind of just like where I am, right? Because your friends start to get these bigger and better things. And then you realize like, wait, I'm actually really happy with where I am. And I don't know if I would want to scale that part of my life.
I love that level of like self-awareness, right? Because I think oftentimes we do fall victim to kind of that comparison trap where we feel like I'm this age, I'm here, I have this career, I'm making this amount of money, I should be doing this XYZ. And, you know, going back to that core as to why you're doing what you're doing and understanding that you're building a life that looks completely different than probably most of your friends and family. And so that's going to require you to be making different decisions in order to live a life that is extraordinary.
I think for us, and I say this with all humility, like we are so proud of the success we have with the businesses. But for us, success really is like Carlos doesn't work Sundays. So Sunday's like our day to get really clear on how we want to have fun. And we have fun with our kids. We have fun with each other. We have fun with our family, and friendship is a big part of what we consider success with Carlos. So finding time to hang out with our crew and our friends, all of those things have to coexist. And I think that's where the balance comes in, where you have to be really clear. Like I was talking to a friend and she's like, I just want to spend more time with my kids. And I'm like, well, how much more time? And what do you want to do in that time? Because I don't know about, like, it might sound like I'm all about my kids, but like, I don't know if I can hang more than 1 hour individually with them. I don't know if I could play dolls for how much time do you want to spend? And I think when you're very clear about how you want to spend that time with who and which groups, it gets a little easier.
It's about, I think, the quality over the quantity, right? I think a lot of people get stressed out because they think, oh, if I start a business, I'm never going to see my family or I'm never going to see my kids. And it's like, even if you have a ton of time with them now, like, are you actually taking advantage of that time? Are you actually doing things and creating memories and like really pouring into those moments? Because there's a difference between kind of just being there and actually being present. It's not the same. And so for me, like whenever I have opportunities to, travel for business and doing things like that, I know that I'm going to have to carve out some time to catch up once I get back. And that just keeps me grounded and away from the mom guilt that I think can happen to a lot of people when they do understand that there are going to be times where you are going to have to sacrifice time with your family to just get to your personal and your business goals. But being intentional about the time that you do have, I think that's the key. Okay, so I can only imagine what it's like to be in business with the person that you also share a bed with, okay? And you're a parent, okay? So there's a lot of dynamics here. There's the business partnership, the family partnership, the parent relationship. Like, how do you guys manage all of that?
So it's not for everyone. What I will say is I think it's all we know, right? So when I was a publicist and I had my own agency, Carlos then started to like do photos for me and different things like that. So it's a little bit about all we know has some to do with it. I think that I would love to sit here and be like, oh my God, we were so intentional when we met. I was not who I am today when I was 25 years old. So there was a certain level of ambition that both of us had, and it has served us. Now, what I want to say is it's all integrated. So when we're taking a road trip with the family, we do talk about business, right? And we talk about the playlist that we want to listen to, and we talk about the kids. Like it's all one conversation. And I think because we're both in it, not one person feels like, oh my God, here we go again. We're going to talk about work. I thought we were not working, right? And then there are times we have to be very intentionalized and compartmentalized, right? So like just yesterday, we said, oh, let's go have some coffee and let's just talk about the things that are happening at school with our kids. Their schedules are getting more filled up. Summer's coming up. And then that was all we talked about because there's a lot of decisions to be made there. And it just felt good to have this space outside of our home to just focus on that. And so I think it's about being very intentional. We sit down with a spreadsheet, finances. I don't want to say we do it weekly, but we do it enough times where we can see what are the different conversations we have to have. So I know it sounds cliche, but really communicating and transparent. Now, I'm a woman. I'm a very emotional woman. So we've been together for a long time. So we have come to a point where he's just like, if it's going to be like a vent session about your emotions, just forewarn me. And I'll be like, tomorrow I need to talk about my feelings. And he's like, okay. And I think it's just getting comfortable with asking for what you need and want. And then as a mom, one of the biggest lessons I learned is you cannot go to your husband to talk about mom life stuff. They just will never get it. I mean, they want to, they're a parent also, but there are some shit that goes on with moms that nobody else could understand but another mom, right? You need a mom to be like, it doesn't matter what decision you make. Moms don't get it wrong in my eyes. Like, just don't, right? Like, we show up, we do the best we can, we pivot, we continue. And I think understanding what you need is important and going to the right people.
What does that support system look like for you? Because that's a great, point that you make where there are just different moments in this journey, whether you are, an entrepreneur that needs a mentor or you're a mom that needs an ear to listen to. We all need to create those support systems for ourselves. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me, I have a good partner. I consider him to be my best friend, so I can go to him. But I do have select women who are moms. And I think that we are not just similar in how we parent, but similar in ambition I just have like a group of women that I could really talk to. Some have been around for a really long time, so they actually know every phase of my life, which is awesome. And some, I can really go to. Another part that I realized I needed was this creative women's space. So that's where the Dream Lab had come in. That's where I was coaching one-on-one, which was a little bit of a sacrifice for me because it's hard to grow multiple businesses at the same time. So I had to take a step back from that. And then I did your blog bootcamp, which I bought I can't remember when I bought it, a long time ago. And now that I have the capacity, it's one of the things I'm going to relaunch just to talk about this journey, just to talk about what it's like to be a mom of growing kids, a growing business, a working mom. And so sometimes some of the support I need is for me to be able to have a space to be creative, for me to be able to connect with like-minded women, and that will fill my cup. And then the other part just is how to really create systems that work for me. So meditating, prayer, and being able to do that. I am one of those people that wakes up before everybody else and gives myself that time. It's important to me. And I learn a little bit every time. It's like a system that keeps moving.
Absolutely. It keeps evolving kind of as you figure out what you need. I was always the type of person where I would say I was not a morning person, and then that definitely changed after becoming a mom. Those moments that you get to yourself in the beginning of the day are very, very good for your mental health. And so now I have no issue waking up early and knowing that like I can pour into myself by having a workout real quick or whatever it is. I think we need to be way more intentional, especially as you're building your business and you're, doing the mom thing, carving out those moments where like nobody needs you. It's just about you. I think that's what saves your sanity.
I will say there is nothing worse than waking up to a toddler in your face asking you for something. I just can't. So I was not a morning person. I mean, I was literally the kind of person that I remember when I first moved in with Carlos and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "It's 11 and it's Saturday and you're talking to me? I don't know." And now I'm the first one up, 5:30. I'm up before everybody. The kids are older now, so they sleep longer. But yeah, I'm that person now.
Yeah. It just shows that we have the capability to evolve, y'all. We'd be doing shit we never thought we'd be doing, especially when you become a parent. All right. So you mentioned that your son talks about taking over the family business, which I think is incredible. How have you integrated your children into your entrepreneurship journey?
So I've done two things. I have really wanted to navigate the narrative around work. So when there are times where maybe Carlos is not, so Carlos is in the operation day to day. I do strategy, marketing, and then any high level meeting where we're going to be taking on, let's say, new projects or things like that. So most of that can always happen from home. Along even when I have like a regular like corporate job, I thank God to the pandemic have mostly only worked from home. So one of the things I have done is really wanted to help them understand what it means to work. And so I always bring a positive tone. I'm like, "Oh, he's not here, but it's not a bad thing that he's not here. It's not a bad thing that he's working all these hours and all these days." And I really try to put it in a way where, "Oh, he's out." When they were really little, my son was 3 and she was 1. I would call my son little big boss when my Carlos wasn't around. "You're going to help me. You don't have to take care of your sister, but you're just going to be the one who kind of like helps me with little things. And isn't it so great that he's working?" So when you ask my kids what they think about their dad, they say he's a really hard worker. So that's the first one. And the second one is we really do have sit downs with them. We tell them what it's going to be like. We explain to them about money. We talk to them about business. We talk to them. I think the first time we had a conversation about like debt versus not having debt with my son, he was really young and, they take things very literal. So he was like, when we explained what interest was, he's like, "That's so stupid. Why would anybody ever do that? You got to pay more than what you give." And so they really kind of manage conversations, ask questions. But recently he's been that. So they're part of a lot of meetings. We take them to meetings with us. that's kind of the beauty about being an entrepreneur, that it doesn't look unprofessional. If you show up with 2 kids, you're just like, they're here. We're looking at different spaces. They're doing walkthroughs. They're listening to conversations. Like I said, we talk a lot in the car, and they're really understanding what all these things mean. And now they go to certain places and like, "Ooh, we should have a Carlitos here." And we ask them, "Why do you think that?" And then my son will say like, "Well, there's a lot of foot traffic here." And he'll repeat things that he has heard us say. And so we talk about business. So I know you're supposed to let your kids kind of follow their own dreams, but my daughter's really into like art, and she's like, "I'm going to be a teacher." And, I say this in a light way, but Carl's like, that ain't going to pay your way. So you're going to have to find how to own the school.
You know what? I love that. I mean, it's just about kind of framing the realistic, expectations of what the future may hold.
So now she's like, "Oh, well, maybe I could do this." And she's in the design meetings with Carlos. Something that uniquely happened, just fate of God, I guess. My brother's an architect for brick and mortars and retail. So he's the architect for the last restaurant we opened. So she likes to be in those meetings, and it's her uncle and her dad and me. So we ask her. Sometimes Carlos will take their input because they're small and we could put them in and they get to see it. So it's just little things. They're just involved in different aspects of the business, and they feel like they're really a part of it.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like tapping into their strengths or the things that interest them and like figuring out how to integrate that as a way to teach. I think that's a brilliant piece of advice. Now, so for someone like you, Sabrina, who has obviously a ton of experience in just starting businesses, pivoting your identity, for the women that you talk to, right? You obviously, as a coach, as someone who has a podcast, I'm sure you hear a lot of the same narratives where it's like, I would love to do something, Sabrina, but like, I got all this mind drama going on, like, what if it fails? What if it's the wrong thing to invest in? What if I lose money? What if? What's your response to those kind of limiting beliefs that can stop us from taking a leap into doing the thing that we want to do?
Yeah. So one of the first things I tell women when they start sharing a lot of that is I tell them, like, don't forget that when you were 20, you had very specific dreams and you technically already accomplished them, because that's what women do. You wanted a car, you wanted a marriage. I always say the reason why there's so many weddings is because girls start manifesting that since they're like 5 years old.
That's so true.
You started manifesting, you knew what color, like you put so much thought effort into that, what that day was going to look like. So of course it's going to come to fruition, right? So think back of everything that you have accomplished. The difference is that somewhere along the line, you kept telling yourself it wasn't enough. So it's not until you acknowledge what you have accomplished that you're going to be able to accomplish more. You have to acknowledge it. And I'm guilty of it too. There was like a point in my life where I was like, I haven't done enough. And I'm like, well, what more do you want to do? Because if you're not clear on that, right? If you just keep saying, I'm scared, I haven't done enough, you really need to take inventory of what you have done. Acknowledge it, own it. And so when I was coaching, I would tell women to write almost like a introduction to, like, let's say like a podcast, like yourself, all your accreditations. And then if you read it, you're like, wow, I've done a lot. Now move from there. Move from the place of experience, move from the place of wisdom, especially women in their 40s. Like, we got to stop with I chose wrong. There was nothing that you chose wrong. If you chose one career when you were 20 and now you're 40 and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, you didn't choose wrong. It's just time to change. And no one told us we were going to accomplish our dreams so young.
I love that perspective, because I think for me, there's a lot of these like internal narratives that for some reason we think we have to have this all figured out by the time you're like 18 years old. So you got to figure out what's the thing you want to do for the rest of your life. And I think we need to really start giving ourselves permission to evolve, because you don't know what you're going to be exposed to, what ideas you're going to be, introduced to, what type of people you're going to be around as you just like start living life, and not boxing yourself in. I think it's something we have to do if we want to give ourselves the best opportunity to kind of manifest whatever is waiting for us.
Yeah. And you can't be afraid to learn new things, right? I think that women, as we get older, when we don't know something, we take it personal. Like I've met women who are like, oh, but I'm not good at business and numbers. I'm like, have you ever worked in finance? Have you ever if you have, then maybe, but like you haven't. Or people say like, I'm not good at marketing. It's like you. And I'm like, I have a marketing degree. I've worked in this pretty much my whole life. Right. And so you have to not be afraid to learn new things. And I think the business has taught Carlos and I that we have learned so many new skills that we were forced to learn that we hadn't. I mean, we're learning construction, we're learning like just things we had never had to really think about, right? So you can't be afraid to learn, and you have to let go of the shame of the things you don't know because nobody taught you to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective, this growth mindset where you are okay being, quote, the dumbest person in the room. You know, I think it's okay. Like oftentimes when we get stressed out about not knowing things, it's because we're coming from a place of where we're afraid of our ego getting hurt, right? Or like saying something or doing something and quote unquote getting it wrong. But I need everybody that's listening to this who is inspired by an entrepreneur to understand that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing in the beginning. And sometimes we still don't know what the fuck we're doing, especially if we're continuing to put ourselves out of our comfort zone, trying new things. I didn't know how to run a podcast. I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to, get speaking engagements and work with brands and have like email marketing systems in place and write copy. Like all of these things that I've had to learn over time has been trial and error. And that is literally, I think, the most powerful aspect of entrepreneurship. It forces you to continuously learn what you're capable of.
Right. I know people hear this all the time, but like, if you don't start, it's just never going to happen.
If you don't like your fucking job and you've always wanted to work for yourself, until you actually take the step to try that first business, whether or not it's going to be successful, you really should stop complaining about the fucking job that you hate.
And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be transparent and share that I still have a job, is because it's part of the strategy, right? It's part of the overall strategy of growing this business. And so I didn't know it was technically, this journey started in 2008. The decision that we made as a married couple saying, okay, I'm going to go back. You're going to go back to college and I'm going to get a job. So, and we're going to have this photography business and this is how we're going to build what we need to start. That was 2008 and it didn't start until 2017.
That perspective, I think, is really helpful because it just makes you realize there are steps, right? None of this stuff is instant. Even though what you think is like overnight success on social media, most entrepreneurs that are like successful have so much skin in the game, have so much time invested, have made very intentional decisions over and over and over again to get to a place where now they have the options to, take this full time or whatever it is that the goal is. And I like to always refer to our jobs, as your angel investor in your business. For a lot of us who are first generation, who do not have inheritances, who do not have open credit lines with our parents to be able to start businesses, your fucking paycheck is going to be how it starts, right? And so the same way that you save money for a vacation or to upgrade your car or to get your first apartment, you need to start treating those business goals as a line item in your budget and start setting aside money to make that shit happen if that's what you really want to do.
As women, I always say this. If you were able to save for a wedding, you can save to start a business.
Okay, because it's not even probably going to cost you as much as that damn wedding. And for sure, you're going to be able to enjoy that business for years to come versus a whole fucking day.
And look, I'm the most rom-com. I had it all. I had the quinceañeras and the weddings and all, and I love them. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying do both. Like you did it once, do it again. It's part of that, right? Just understanding and feeling good, because we wanted to start with a brick and mortar. We wanted to start with what we have today. Then we scaled back and we're like, okay, we can't do that. We couldn't actually, our food truck is a trailer because we couldn't afford a food truck. So our food truck is still a trailer, and we bought what we could afford.
I love it. Sabrina, so obviously you guys are still on the road to scaling and growing this business. You've got big visions for what's to come. Give us some insight into what you have going on. Like, what's the next phase?
Yeah, so the big brick and mortars that are full service have really launched a second brand. So, it's interesting to say, I guess we're a hospitality group now. We have 2 brands. And I think that we like to create a strong brand, a strong experience. Our biggest mission is to really create extraordinary food experiences, really good quality, and at a value almost experience. So Carlos and I, we think about who we are. We think about our parents. So when you go to our restaurants, like, it's going to be a really good meal. It's going to be really good quality. It's going to be high quality, really great drinks, and it's not going to break the bank, right? Because we think about that a lot. Like, where could we have gone for birthdays multiple times, right? I mean, we love to spend money on food, but there's some restaurants where you're like, all right, went once, that's going to have to wait a little bit till we go again, right? So creating those experiences that are a reflection of our culture, both the immigrant side, but also, like, Carlos grew up in New York City, right? So it's a full reflection of what it's like. So if you go into our spaces, there's always street art, and there's always more than just like the food within the experience, and just being able to continue to infuse that. We have another location opening up at the end of the year in New Jersey, also a taqueria. And I think from here, we're really just looking to scale opportunities. After 2025, we're going to take 2026 to see what that looks like. And again, our risk isn't what it was when we were 25. And there's a lot. It's a much bigger business, right? So there's a lot of people at the table making these decisions now, and that's really what we're focused on. But if I want to, really add that, is that it's really about incorporating your whole life. So really, for Carlos and I, is the more present we could be with our kids. They're 10 and 7 now, and it goes fast. I mean, they say that, right? But it goes so fast, and it's becoming more and more evident to us. So for us, it's really, how could we be more present? And even if we grow maybe a little slower during these years, that's okay with us. And that's probably the biggest thing. And not just with, this is going to sound really funny because I'm going to be 45 this summer, not just with our kids, but with our friends too. We're like, shit, we're getting older. Like, our friends are older. And I had this epiphany where I'm like, oh, this is it. This is life. This is the best that life has to offer, and how can I enjoy it the most that I can?
I love that message. I love your story, and I am so excited to see one of your restaurants pop up closer to me, because I was actually able to check out the location at Newark Airport, and the food was delicious, y'all. Okay. So tell us the name of the restaurant again.
Yeah. So it's Carlitos Barbecue Taqueria, and there's Carlitos Tequileria. That one is inside the Palisades Mall in West Nyack. So if you're in the New York area, stop by there. And then the one coming to New Jersey will be in North Arlington, which is close to the Meadowlands, at the end of the summer.
Amazing. Sabrina, thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you and your family as you continue to scale and grow this business. I know that the fact that you guys have been so successful, it just speaks to how much of a partnership that you have and how much clarity you have on what you guys are doing and why. And I'm just continuing to wish y'all so much success, and keep us posted on, when you're going to show up here in Florida, because we like some tacos out here.
You're not the only one. Florida has been on that. It'll definitely probably be northeast and then east, and then we'll see.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.